I wanted to touch a little bit more on so working after you'd worked with the project and you come back and kind of working on disseminating that within the community. How did your work how did that impact the work that you were doing later on?
I mean, in a way, I was quite lucky because I was working for a health authority in terms of the health promotion unit. So we could organise, I'm smiling because I'm thinking about one of the seminars.
Tell me about it.
I will. We could organise seminars for local communities, you know, about our research finding. And so this one seminar where we organised for local people, but also for managers in the NHS and catering managers on Caribbean diet. So we presented what we'd found, and then people started to ask the question, well, why aren't there more black people working in catering services? And then the catering manager, and to say racism was just so embedded in their thinking, came on to, and he said, oh, it's because you know, black people haven't had enough training and education on things like hygiene. And so we had a whole range of people from black communities in Handsworth and a whole range of ages. One older black woman got up and said, you're telling us about hygiene? She said, when we came here, you were still leaving bread on the doorstep. And that's how they used to deliver bread. Not in any packaging, just on the doorstep. And she said, and you want to teach us about hygiene? And I always remember that because the catering manager was flabbergasted. And in a way we were able to knock all the myths they had about black people not being hygienic, not coming forward for training, not having education. And we used a lot of those seminars to enable those conversations, those dialogues between black communities and NHS managers. But I was just, as I say, I was well placed because I was the head of the health promotion unit, so I could organise those seminars. And even though my managers perhaps were a little bit worried about what I was doing, I did have the support to do that, and we did have the resources to do that.
Yeah. Why were they worried?
I think they were worried because they themselves were racist, and they were a little bit worried about this black woman manager who suddenly, was actually acknowledging and talking about racism with the NHS. We're talking about the 80s now, and so many things happened to me as a black senior manager in that organisation. I'll give one example. So again, I was very good at getting funding for different projects. So we used to do like health fairs in local communities, like in Handsworth Park and different places. And I was always having to ask for transport, to take out all equipment and everything else. And so I thought it'd be better if we had our own van. So I applied to what was called Inner City Partnership for a van, and it was approved. We got funding for a van. So I'm sitting waiting for this van to appear. And then I realise that I've seen that there was a system that delivered all the post to all the health centres, that there was a new postal van. And I thought, well, that's funny. I wonder where that's come from. So I went to the person who was the community manager, and I said, what's happened to the van that has been approved for all of our health fairs? And he looked very kind of shaken. And he said, it's actually arrived. I said, really? I said, so where is it? Well, we needed a new post van. So we have been using it as a post van. I said, and you didn't even think to tell me that the van's arrived, and even to discuss with me that you're going to use it as a post van. And that was just another example. I'm a black senior manager, and yet they just felt that they could just ignore me. And we came to a compromise in the end where it was used as a post van, and then we also used it for our health fairs.
Yeah.
But I was just shocked that I had got the funding. You know, they hadn't got the funding. I had used my initiative to get the funding, and then they used it for some mainstream service without even telling me.
Yeah.
And that made me more aware, actually. It made me more conscious that I had to question and challenge, you know, a lot more things in the health service.
Yeah. Were you in that role for many years?
I was in that role for 4 years, so from 1984 to 1988.
Right.
And then actually I went then to do a similar role, but in the adjacent health authority, Sandwell,
Okay.
from 84 to 96, 8 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that? Was that post very similar to the one that you were doing?
It was very similar, and in fact, again, they had a health promotion unit, but it hadn't really functioned properly as a health promotion unit. And so what they wanted me to do when they appointed me was to restructure it and organise it in terms of health promotion. And we were able then, because what I realised is that in order to develop appropriate health promotion programmes, we needed to do that based on appropriate evidence. And we didn't have enough evidence in a lot of cases. So again, I got funding from the Health Education Authority or the Health Education Council, I can't remember which it was then, for a project called the Smethwick Heart Action Research Project, SHARP. And what we did was work with different communities within Sandwell. So in Indian communities, Bangladeshi communities, Caribbean communities, and we did a survey to find out what people knew about heart health. And the way that we did the survey is that we actually we employed and we trained community researchers, so that community researchers, and particularly where we needed people who spoke different languages, but also we kind of matched to some extent the researchers to the community. So we had Indian Punjabi researchers, we had Caribbean researchers, and we trained them up as researchers in order to undertake the survey. And that went really well, actually. It's okay. It went really well, and
to work in the community.
To work in the community. And again, you see, people said to us, oh, you can't do this research, hard to reach communities, stuff like that. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. And so, for example, we alongside the research, we actually did community engagement as well. So I remember before we started the research, we had a lot of events at different community places to talk about what we were going to do. And I remember us organising an event at a Punjabi, Indian Punjabi community centre in Smethwick. And even the elders said to me, oh, you know, Asian women won't come, and if they come, they won't talk about their experiences.
Oh.
I mean, they were kind of, you know, these are some of the Indian elders were telling me this rubbish. I thought, this is ridiculous. So anyhow, we set up the event, we had interpreters, we had a lot of food. That's what I found was really important at all the community events we did, having appropriate food, because it's a real vehicle for people to start to feel relaxed and start. Yeah, absolutely. And Indian women came, and they started talking about their experiences trying to use the NHS, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter that there were other men there. It just didn't matter. They talked about their experiences, and you know, some of them talked through interpreters. Other people spoke, you know, and I thought to myself, all these people have been telling me you can't do this. It won't work.
Yeah.
and yet it does work.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's a commonality, you know, in relation to talking about health experiences.
Yeah. And particularly talking about health experiences that there is no other outlet for.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. That's it.
And particularly when there is such a kind of a dearth of ignorance in the health system already. And so what I've at least found is that people are a lot more, at least in our communities, a lot more willing to talk to each other about these things as opposed to people in positions of authority, because it's, well, my GP's not listening to me anyway. And did you find this a lot among the...
Yeah, we did. We found that, you know, that their GPs weren't listening to them, that other health workers were just, what's the word? Well, we're not respecting them.
Yeah.
And so we're not listening to them properly and not responding to them respectfully.
Yeah.
And we continued the kind of work that I'd established in West Birmingham, where we had a lot of seminars inviting local people, local community workers and health workers, so that you could develop that dialogue between, you know, the health workers and people in local communities. And it's funny because I did this, let's say, over the 8 years that I was there. And because that is the way that I felt we could develop proper health promotion programs. And I just took it for granted for that was the way that we would work. And I didn't really think much of it. And then it was only recently I went to a conference, and I think the woman who is now the Director of Public Health for Sandwell came up to me. She said, "Hello, Jenny." I said, "Oh, do you know me?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "I used to come to all the seminars that you organised." And I just thought it was, because you do this without, you know, not for recognition, as it were. You do it because you think that is the best way to work. We have to work with local communities. And she said, "Yeah, I came to all of your seminars," she said. And I thought, well, that's really good, because she's now Director of Public Health for Sandwell. And she can actually, you know, effect change.
Yeah, and utilise all the things that she kind of... if we touch a bit more on kind of the challenges you had encountered with your focus on minoritized women, black women, and the kind of... Because I think also a lot of... I think even in the data recently, where it's hard to differentiate the data from the black community into black women. And a lot of the times when they say this is the data for the black community, they really just mean black men.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the impacts of COVID is that it made a lot of epidemiologists realise that the data that they were collecting was not helpful. Because, as you say, often they had not disaggregated different black communities, had not disaggregated in terms of gender. And so we had very little information on the experiences of black women. I think there was slightly more information on Asian women, but that's not from a good place. It was because they wanted to blame Asian cultures for the inadequacies in the health service, you know, and for the differences in terms of health outcomes. So one of the things that I did, so jumping in terms of my career, I left West Birmingham, went to work at Birmingham University, and then worked for the Open University, and I've been at the Open University for over 20 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and actually I myself in 2008 I was really unwell. And I think when I was going back to work, I then realised that I had lost contact, lost touch with black women's health. And I thought, no. What my illness spurred me to do was to focus on black women's health. So I actually set up a Black Women's Health and Wellbeing Research Network. And the reason for that network was to enable a focus on black women's health, And I was unapologetic. I said, this network is on black women's health because black women have been ignored for so long, and we don't even appear in the data.
Yeah.
And where there are research studies, they're like specific, studies that are all separate. And what I wanted to do is to enable an opportunity for black researchers to get together as well. So that was the reasoning for doing that.
Oh wow, okay. Which I'm grateful for, because I love the Black Women's Health, Wellbeing and Health and Wellbeing Network. There was an event last year that I couldn't make because of my own health issues, but hopefully make many more. But I watched the talk that